The Sine Institute of Policy and Politics is American University's incubator for policy innovation. We convene leaders in the academic, public, private, nonprofit, and journalism sectors to engage and promote common ground and nonpartisan solutions. In an evolving world, we seize the opportunity to work on the nation's most pressing challenges through collaboration by experts and top scholars in their field with students in research and scholarship. As part of that goal, the Sine Institute leverages American University's location in our nation's capital, the nexus of government and a growing international business center. We connect diverse perspectives from around the country and around the world with our world-class academics and research, experienced practitioners, and the most politically active student body in the U.S. We stand apart through our focus on the role of business and the nonprofit community in public policy, the rise of the importance of economic regions in the United States, and international policy issues. Our focus is to make an immediate impact at the intersection of policy and politics that leads to real and lasting change. Thank you for joining us as we convene, communicate, and collaborate. And now introducing 2023 Sine Fellow, the Honorable Mimi Walters.
So having said that, I'd love to introduce you to the program today. Many of you know Congresswoman Mimi Walter, who is our Sine Fellow this semester, working with us on mental health issues and sharing with us some of the things that she did on the Hill and the work that she's doing now in these issues that are important. If you missed any of them, her playlist is up on the American University YouTube channel. She brought incredible guest speakers. We encourage you to watch those. And we're going to stay, this is Mimi's last event with us here in her studio. But we're so excited to know that she is an alumni of the Sine Institute program. And if you talk to an alumni of the Sine Institute program, we'll be talking to you. Don't you worry. So Mimi, of course, as I mentioned, was, Congresswoman recently, so really navigated the hills of Congress and really can talk to us about that. But she has a long history of public service. She was also the Laguna, how do you pronounce it? Niguel City Council. And what I think is really, really fascinating about your career is you served in both California State Assembly and the California State Senate. So we've seen kind of the different levels of government. So that's, kind of an interesting way to navigate that. So there's a lot of questions you can ask. She's also led teams, done all of that, so leadership questions would be great. Now, I am very honored to also bring to you today an incredible alum of ours here at American University, the Honorable Connie Morella. Hello, Connie, it's nice to have you here. An American politician and diplomat. Connie also served in Congress from Maryland, of which district? No, actually, Montgomery County. The state legislation was 16, so I started in the state. That's right. And so, but also we're proud because you currently serve as ambassador in residence at the American University School of Public Affairs and in the Women in Politics Institute. So, and as an alum of AU, we welcome you here and your thoughts and insights. So we appreciate having you here. I'm letting everybody let you talk about that. Some stuff for the audience. Well, something there. And then also, I just want to let you all know here today, we have a special guest who is also an alum of American University from the Washington College of Law, Jane Timken, who served as the Republican chair of the Ohio Republican Party and also was a candidate for Senate. From Ohio. Also, she's going to be more than willing to answer some of your questions as well. If you have questions for Jane, we'll bring her up on the Q&A and we can ask questions as well. Nice to see you. I'm going to be in conversation a little because I'm the executive director and I've decided I want to ask a lot of leadership and career questions too. So I think a good place to start with the program would be just asking you, we're going to take you back a little bit as you started out in your career. What are one of the things that you think is the most important thing to know as you were, leaving college, getting out in the workforce? What is something that you think is a really good place to start about sharing with the team today? Do you want me to start? Yes, I'm looking at you. I want to start there.
So as you are venturing out of college, it's kind of a scary time, right? Because you now have to be on your own. And some of you might be being supported by your parents right now, and maybe you're not, but if you are being supported and you have to go out and make a living, it can be kind of frightening. And I knew personally that I always wanted to go into public service. But I also knew that I had to get a job because my parents were cutting me off. And I had to make a living. So, I ended up going into sales because my dad says if you go into sales, if you're performing, you're not gonna get fired. So that's pretty much the reason I went into sales, because I didn't really have any sort of, I wasn't going on to graduate school. Even though,
What did you study in
I
college?
was a science major, and a ton of my friends were going into, to be lawyers. But I took a constitutional law class and I didn't do very well. And I said, that's it, I'm not gonna be a lawyer. That was like the decision for me. I didn't want to go to law school. I decided I wanted to make law eventually, let the lawyers figure out what they all meant. So there are like that. But you know, I would say as you're graduating, don't lose, faith. I mean, you're probably gonna see some setbacks as you're trying to navigate what your next steps are. And maybe you're going through interviews to get jobs, or maybe you're applying to different schools because you want to go on to graduate school. You're always gonna have some setbacks. But as long as you're working hard, you're never gonna know when something's gonna land in your lap, and it's probably gonna be when you least expect it. So even though you might be getting frustrated and you sort of lose faith and lose confidence, just hang in there and have confidence that something's gonna break for you, and it will, as long as you work hard. I can guarantee you, as long as you work hard, you'll catch a break.
As for me, when I graduated from college, to university as it was, at that time, actually, I was in office. I ran for office then. I ran for office in high school too, and I think back on it, which means that I must have wanted to connect with my fellow students, and I never thought about politics. I then went on to teach at a community college. Some of you may know Montgomery County has a great community college system. I taught there, and then the time came 1971, when you weren't even alive. And
Here I
that
was
was
born.
that was the beginning of the second wave of the women's movement. And I must say it was the women's movement that took the movement into me. I was appointed to a commission for women in Montgomery County to look at the concept of the Equal Rights Amendment. Had been introduced by a woman from Michigan, Margaret Griffith. And she was able to get it past the House, past the Senate. How did she do it? She did it with a discharge petition, so it didn't have to go to committee, where the committee chair would never have let it out. And so we got the vote, and then it was signed by the president. And who was president then?
She didn't do it.
You believe it? Richard Nixon signed the Equal Rights Amendment, and then it had to go to the states to be ratified. So that's why when I was on the Commission for Women, it was the timing, was the exact time when we tried lobbying our state legislators to get them to pass it. Ultimately, Maryland did pass it. It didn't make it, the required number of votes, but Maryland did pass it. So then I thought, I think maybe I want to get more involved with politics, because I had to persuade the people in Montgomery County to look at equity for women. Why was I a teacher? Well, I love teaching. It's a wonderful profession. But when I started out, it was one of the two roles that women could have. You'd be a nurse, a teacher, or,
Different time.
yeah, just something like that idea, caregiver. And so then I remember thinking, if you don't have a seat at the table, you might be on the menu. But then Shirley Chisholm said it best. She said, if you don't have a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. So I did. So that was what inspired me to run for office. What do I say to you? I didn't, my first office, it was when Nixon was being impeached. And I was the closest loser in the county, but I ran again and then I topped the ticket. So what I'm saying, picking up on what the congresswoman has said, is that when you don't succeed at first, keep plugging away. Have a purpose, have a plan, have a passion, and then have patience and perseverance. So I say that in each one of those words as meaning in your own lives as you think about it. So then I was in my state legislature, and then I was able to continue the journey 8 years later and go into the federal Congress. And then to that.
And then we get to. Yeah, I knew it was coming. I knew it was coming. So, Amy, let me go to you for a minute because you said earlier, like you wanted to write the laws. But there's some students sitting here, there's some students watching virtually and you'll watch virtually, right? Do you think you can translate your passions to your work? Like if you're fortunate enough, and what were the things that you felt strongly about that kind of led you to public service?
Well, I actually really got interested in public service when I was in high school. I had gone to a new school. I grew up in a Catholic family, went to a very small Catholic school, and then I went to the public high school. And I didn't know anybody. And so in order to make friends, I got involved in student government. That's literally how I got my start. And I really enjoyed feeling like I was part of a community and I met a lot of kids in my class. So you fast forward to the end of my sophomore year, and that's when you have to run for student council for the next year. So I ran for president. And the reason I ran for president was nobody ran against me. And so I won. Those are the best race. I would never won. And then fast forward to my junior year, I really wanted to run for student body president for my senior year. My brother actually had been student body president at the school many, many years before me. And I wanted to run for student body president, but my best friend wanted to run for student body president and I didn't want to take her on. That was so mean. So I decided to run for junior class president. The cool thing about that was you got to graduate first in graduation, you got to make a speech. So it's kind of a cool thing. You got to graduate before the student body president did. So I thought, okay, well, I'll just run for senior class president. But this time I was running against a really, really popular guy. And I thought, there's no way I'm gonna beat this guy. Well, I was dating the star of the basketball team. So I had and so I won. And then my senior year, I had applied to go to UCLA. And my older siblings had all gone to UCLA, so I was kind of like, that's what we did in our family. And back then it was really get into. So I had heard about this program that you could intern on Capitol Hill. And I really wanted to go to Washington, DC to see what it was like, because I was learning about it in my government classes. I was involved in student government. So the first chance I got was my sophomore year at UCLA. I applied my freshman year and I got to go that first quarter my sophomore year. And Reagan had just been president. And Reagan was the first person I could ever vote for. I turned 18 the year he ran. And so I came back here, worked for a congressman named Bill Thomas, and Kevin McCarthy has taken his position. When Bill left, he's from Bakersfield, Kevin McCarthy ran for his seat. And I just thought this is pretty cool. I mean, I got to go to committee hearings and listen to, you know, how legislation was being made. I got to, you know, I got treated really well as if I was one of the team. And so that piqued my interest in getting excited and passionate about someday coming back. But
And did you think you would come back as in staff or did you?
So I didn't want to be staff. I wanted to come back as a decision maker.
Right.
That was one of my goals. And I think maybe because I got the exposure to be to the members as well as to the staff. And so I felt like I actually wanted to have that opportunity to be a member. But of course, you know, it was a long road to get there. I had to graduate, got my job in sales. Met my husband, you know, I wanted to get married, have a family. No, I didn't know. He broke up with me. By the way, he broke up with me in my senior year. That's a whole nother story.
Might have to do a 6.
Yeah. But anyway, so I you know, got married, you know, started my family. I said, how am I going to get involved? I really want to do this. I don't know. I didn't know what to do. I didn't have anybody tell me, oh, here's what you should do. I didn't have a lot of women mentors back then. So I moved back to the city I grew up in where we raised our family. And I walked into City Hall one day to the activities liaison and I said, I want to volunteer. And she said, well, we got a job for you. How about volunteering on the holiday parade? We need help there. I'm like, sure. So my first year I volunteered as like a crowd control person, and then I graduated to being the announcer of the parade. I was literally on Saturday, I did the parade, and on Monday I gave birth to my third child.
And that's multitasking.
Yeah, that was pretty good. And then what I did was, I got involved on one of their committees. And then I ran for city council in 1996 and I just did it. I thought, you know what, I'm gonna follow my dream. I loved being a part of the community. And I wanted to see how I could have a further impact. And so I ran and I lost. But I ended up getting appointed to the city council, served on it for 8 years. Then we had term limits in California, had an opening in the state assembly, ran for that, won. And then ran for the state senate, won, and then the Republican seat came open for Congress. And then I ran for that, and I did that in 2014. And that's how I was in Congress.
You know, Mimi, it's one of the things I've gotten to know you over the semester and admire, like, you find the opportunities, and that might be one of the things that we, need to talk about today, is sometimes it's not like, I always say, your career is not a ladder.
Right.
It's a jungle gym, right? Like, it's not, like, we all want to say, here's your playbook, I'll go, so that's not how it happens. And that's where I have to ask you, what's an example of you creating an opportunity or like going after something? Because that's what you really, I think, have to do with like certain items.
I think I've done that a large part of my life, even just running for office. And as a matter of fact, I was a Republican in a Democratic area. Where I was ultimately elected, I had the most Democratic district, although I was a Republican in the country. Why was I a Republican? I grew up in Massachusetts as a Democrat, but it was my husband worked for John Langley, who was mayor, he was a member of Congress, and then he became mayor of New York, worked in Nelson Rockefeller. I got to know Jacob Javits. I got to know all of these people that I admired, and I wanted to vote in a primary. This is the case of political savvy. There were some states where you can only vote in the primary in the party with which you are registered. Maryland is one of those. Our good friend, Mac Mathias, who you check him out, he was a senator, a very good U.S. senator. He was running for office and he had a very difficult opponent. He was a Republican, a moderate Republican. And as a Democrat, I wanted to vote for him. And so I changed my party and became a Republican. I couldn't change that, but that's when I did my mental review of the people I admired and what they stood for. The Massachusetts so, I could go through a whole litany of really strong Republicans that I believed in. And fiscally, I was a human rights advocate, that Republicans felt that way too. And so I stayed. And therefore, I guess what I'm saying is that my journey was a difficult one from the beginning, because I refused to turn back my party, and I had to then convince people of another party to vote for me. And that meant the jump was, I jumped into every neighborhood, and I knocked on doors, and they all wanted to know, who's the man you are supporting? I mean, I thought,
Yeah, I'm not surprised by that question.
Right? Yeah, how did that happen? And it was very interesting because the feedback I got, whether they agreed with me or didn't agree with me, their touch was good. So this is advice I would give you. If you respect others, they will respect you. If you have their respect, then you don't have to agree with them on everything, and you'll be able to get things done. So it's George Washington wrote rules of civility and decent behavior. Rule number 1, when in the company of others, act with respect for those who are present. So I would say that 2 generations later,
That still holds true.
that's still
Holds true and was a big part
So
of
I
it.
could go through a lot of other things. I went through voting as a minority with my party, for against the Iraq War. against the impeachment of Clinton. I mean, there's so many other areas, and I had to defend these issues with my constituents. So if they know you have a reason why, and they agree with you on a lot of other things, they respect you. And if they do that, then they will be on your side. They will be your support. I'll be telling a lot of stories like that.
Well, you're going to, we're going to.
Well,
keep
one
you
of
down
my,
for
I
you.
just want to say, one of my concerns is the fact that this is happening less and less often. I was just with a political pundit last night, Ken Melman, talking about the fact that measurements of people will say they're independent. And then like a certain percentage will say they're Republican, and a certain percentage will say they're Democrat, but when they vote, they're not independent. And that's something that you all have got to come to grips with, to make sure that you do get both sides represented and get the equal attention.
Well, that's why we're so grateful to have you here at the Sine Institute, today as we're talking through this. I think one of the things that you did mention, Ambassador, is about people and connecting. This is a big question I know for everybody, because I still, when COVID hit, I was like, oh, I don't have to network for a while. Like, how important is networking, and how do you do it so that it's successful? Because, sometimes I've been to those receptions where it's not that you got 100 cards, right? Like, well, and they're talking this cards, some people don't have. What is networking? What are things you've learned that are helpful to people who are in this early stage of their
Yeah,
career?
I think networking is incredibly important, and I actually think your generation is much better at it than my generation was, when we were getting started, because you have so much opportunity to communicate better than we did. We didn't have social media, we didn't have email, we didn't have any of that stuff. But you never know in your life who you're gonna need to reach out to, because you might have something in common, or you might want to help each other. You might need help with something, and so we had the Rolodex, right? We had the Rolodex of people's names and phone numbers, and it's easy for you to put them, in your phone, and technology's been wonderful, but the networking, is incredibly important, and my son, who works for the National Republican Senatorial Committee, I told him, I said, no matter how long you're in Washington, DC, spend your time getting to meet as many people as possible. You just never know when that person is going to be important in your life as you move forward. And so I would, as you meet people, try to, get their number or get their address, whatever, their email address, and just touch them. And, what's so great is like you have LinkedIn now, you have all Facebook, you have all these other ways to communicate to help you with that network, but I think it is incredibly important.
I'm gonna put in a pitch, mostly because they're staring it down. The Alumni Association is here. We'll talk a little bit more in a little while too, but there's a lot of opportunities through your school's alumni network to meet mentors, stay in touch, connect, especially in the areas that you do. So there's a lot of different, so that's a place that I think is really, really important. Maybe I'm gonna go back to you for a minute, because one of the things that the ambassador said was about respect. And so how did you, sometimes I think public officials make a mistake that once you're elected, you represent everybody, right? Like I always say, campaigns are about contrast, governance about consensus. How important is consensus, and like whether you're in the workplace environment, you're elected official, how important is that to try and build consensus and listen to others?
So consensus is important. However, what I would say is you get elected because of your views on issues. And there are times when you sort of need to stick to your guns, because that's who you're representing, and that's what you got to let on these certain issues. And then there's times that you need to sort of cross the aisle and build that consensus and come to an agreement. And that's the challenge. That is the biggest challenge, because if you think about members of Congress, they have to run every 2 years. And your voting record gets scrutinized by the opposition when you're running. So when you make your decision on how to vote and what you need to do, you've got to be careful that if you come upon a decision that you're not sure what to do, and this happened to me a lot more so, I think, at the local level, then, because those are nonpartisan races, then, in Congress, because they're much more partisan. So at the local level, I used to say to myself, okay, this is what I believe in, but it sounds so good, you know, I'm thinking, oh my gosh. And if I wasn't sure on how to vote on an issue, I would just sort of take a step back and look at what my beliefs are and say, okay, I got elected because this is how I campaigned, and this is why my district, and this is why the city, voters elected me. And, I would just say there's times to stand your ground, and then there's times to come together.
It's really interesting. And Ambassador, let's go to Paris for a minute, because diplomacy matters too. And that, you know, there is diplomacy internationally, but there's also, as you were just saying, Mimi, you have to be, you know, diplomatic as you're navigating that. What were the things that you thought were similar or different when you were representing overseas?
Quite different. I was appointed ambassador to the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. It came from the Marshall Plan. After World War II, George Marshall speaks at Harvard, and he talks about a family of nations after we had fought the Second World War, and he prevailed. The Marshall Plan came from that, and OECD, the most developed countries, came together. And how it ties into your question is that it works by extent. So here I use with Congress, you know, where, you know, you have both sides, so sometimes arguing over things, now more than ever, incidentally. So my word to you is, please try to bring the parties together, listen, learn, lead. But when I got to OECD, you couldn't have anything passed, no conventions without getting everybody to agree. So what does that mean when you have people from different countries with different backgrounds? That meant, forgive me, you had dinner parties.
And I'm okay with that.
Comparison. The unwritten requirement that every delegation should make sure that they have opportunities to have dinner parties. We have them during the week. Weekends are free, but during the week, have dinner parties. So, you know, you got to know people. You had luncheon events where you talked about the issues from the family, but you got to know each other too, and there were different sides. In the evening, it was more a social kind of thing. And you had some where you brought your spouses. Most people didn't have their children with them, but you might be something really like that. But you bring your spouses, so people got to know each other. They got to know something about where they grew up, where they believe. Colorado needs to get you workers, and the next day we have voting on it. And even if they don't get the approval of their country, they still will try to work out something in the way of, well, I'll get back to my country and see if I can get them to approve of this. So we add this amendment. It really made all the difference. I'm like, I think Congress and I think its leadership should do something more about getting parties together. I think we should not have special sections on the floor. We can think about that. When we were separated, do a little bit of a mixture. So you're sitting next to somebody with a different party and, you know, you're talking about this vote's going to be coming up. I also think members of Congress should have 3 weeks where they're in Congress, not in their district, they're in Congress. Maybe the weekend they can fly back if they want. And then 1 week where they're in their district. And they cannot raise money during those 3 weeks while they're in Congress. Yeah, everyone that's yeah. So get kids then can go to school here and they can get to know each other. My feeling is people to people makes all the difference. So I think I spoke a lot on that.
No, I think that's interesting because you have made that connection to that.
But I want to just add a little bit to what you're saying is I agree 100% that interpersonal relationship is so important, and I think we've lost a lot of that in Congress, and that's why I think you see a lot of polarization. I remember, and Connie, you know this back in the old. I don't want to say the old days, honey, but you know, it used to be where, you know, members of Congress would be here, they would raise their families here, and then they would go home to their districts. But then that all changed, and then members of Congress now are expected to be home in their district. They get criticized that they're not home in their district, and you're basically here to go vote, do your job, raise money, and then leave. And so you don't have time to develop the relationships with people on the other side of the aisle. And that does a disservice to us, I think, as Americans, because we're not getting the best legislation putting forward because it's become so polarized, because we don't have those relationships, which I think we really need to have.
Let me ask you this, Mimi, because some people in this room might not want to run for elected office, but of course, we encourage all of you if you want to, but how did you rely on your staff then? Like, you know, as also a manager of a team on the Hill, how important are those jobs? And like, some of them might be pursuing those types of jobs too.
When I first came to Congress, I was 52 years old. And it had been a long time since I had been back there as an intern. And I looked around and I saw how young the staff was. And I said, these are the people that are running our country. Because the members of Congress don't have time to do all the research on the Hill. They rely on their staff. Staff is so important. And you put a lot of confidence in your staff to give you the right, make the right recommendations for you, to give you the proper information. And there's a lot of really, really smart people on the Hill that are advising the members. And I think that you wouldn't see some members be as successful as they are if they didn't have really good staff.
So, and I always say it's another form of public service.
For
Sometimes
sure.
you talk about public service, that
Sure.
you have to be elected, but this is a big piece of service.
It's huge.
I'd like to comment on that too. I've always told my staff, I believe in the 21st Psalm. 21st Psalm. My rod and my staff. They comfort me, they prepare the papers for me in the presence of my constituents. And that is really true. You know, as Nanny says, they work on special issues. We give them each a bundle of issues where they can do a good job in getting all the background for you. And so we used to meet every Monday with the staff, and whatever was going to be coming up, we discussed. Everybody heard it, but then you got the plethora of information from the staff person dealing with that particular issue that was coming out. And so I have a reunion every year with my staff.
Oh, you do?
I still have all these years later, then they are now married. They have kids. A couple of them have kids going to college.
And might be working on the Hill someday.
And they're doing very well. Somebody is with Business Roundtable, somebody's with the Gambling Business Steamboat, they're doing very well. I work with the county government, somebody is a professor, they do it all, and so we get together and we all chuckle and talk about what's going on and talk about, you know, we laugh about things about Congress or whatever, but it becomes a family. Yeah, I guess I'm saying you have your, just like you have your family in organizations, you have your own staff family, and they are so diverse. I had African American, I had Chinese American, I had somebody who was disabled. I had LGBTQ, I had all of them. So in other words, I didn't pick them for any reasons. I picked them because they were people who wanted to serve, and I believe they could serve us well, and they did. And I only mention this to you because we all got together beautiful, and we support each other in any way we could, even though we might have disagreed on somebody's response.
I love this because it speaks about your leadership, and you're still getting together, but it goes back to your points earlier about networking as well. Suddenly, this group that work together are now helping enable.
Oh, yes,
you know,
exactly. Exactly.
Mimi, I love getting to know you. I consider you a friend now, and so I say this with respect. We're gonna go to challenges in life, and you served, were able to accomplish a lot, but then you also didn't win re-election. So
Right.
So-
Yeah, that was a lot of fun.
yeah. Is that not in the briefing?
No, I didn't.
Love that you have taken a situation where you were challenged, but you're still finding ways to work on the issues you cared about. So how do you deal with something that doesn't necessarily go your way? Like this was a challenge for you. And,
Yeah,
you know, and that's why I say respectfully, like sometimes those things will happen to everybody's life, and how do you get through that?
So I had run a couple times, like the first time I told you I lost for the state, for the city council. And then I ran for California State Treasurer and I lost that race too. I wasn't expected to win that one though, so I didn't have any high expectations. But when my reelect for Congress, I was really surprised I didn't win that one. In fact, I remember, about a month before the election, thinking to myself, if I lose, what am I gonna do? This is all I've done for 20 years. I started to get scared. I didn't know what I could do. And, fast forward, yeah, I lost. And even though it was very difficult on me, I'm a mom of four, and I taught my children to win gracefully and to lose gracefully. And so the thing that kept me going after that loss was I have to show my kids you don't get everything in life go your way. So how am I going to handle it? And so I actually think in a way it was a little bit harder on my kids because that's all they knew as I was an elected official their whole lives, all four of them. And so that's what got me sort of through that initial, downturn, if you will, of my career. And then I didn't know, I really, it's like you guys graduated from college. Some of you guys know what you're gonna do, some of you didn't. I didn't know what to do. So I called John Boehner, former speaker, and I called Eric Cantor, who had been the former majority whip, and he had a very high profile loss too. And I just said, can you give me some suggestions? And John Boehner says to me, I'm gonna tell you what I told Joe Crowley. Now, Joe Crowley beat AOC in the primary, and that was really pretty devastating. I'm sorry, he wish he beat AOC. I'm sorry. So she beat, and that was, he was leadership, he'd been in office for a long time, and so John says to me, I'm gonna tell you what I told Joe Crowley. Get over it. I'm like, thanks, I'm glad I called you, John. I said, okay, I'm over it, now what? Now what? And so he put me in touch with a few people. Then I called Eric Cantor, and Eric said, there's a couple things you can do. One is try to do sort of that portfolio route, or, where you do a lot of different things. Or maybe you do one thing. He decided to go the route in the investment banking world. He did one thing. So I sort of went that portfolio route. And I spent the next few months just networking. When we're talking about that networking, I put together an Excel spreadsheet of all the people I knew in DC, and I just started meeting with people. And then I had them introduce me to a couple people. And I just built out my network to a point where I ended up getting myself on 2 boards of publicly traded companies, because that was something I wanted to do. I ended up, I taught at USC before I came here. I also did do a little bit of political advising for a couple donors, tell these guys how to spend their money. They pay me to tell them. That's great. I love, that's the best part of the job.
We're asking them for money now.
I love that. And then I'm very involved in a nonprofit with my son-in-law. And that's really sort of what has brought my passion. And those of you that have all attended the class, about the treatment of psychedelics with the clinical trial studies of mental health. And that's what led me here is I found that I now have an issue that I'm very passionate about. I have time to devote to it. I have the relationships on Capitol Hill that I need to try to further this agenda. And I'm doing it out of labor of love. I'm not being paid, but I don't care because I went into public service as wanting to make an impact somehow. And now, even though I'm not a member of Congress and, getting pulled in a million different directions and doing a little bit here, a little bit there, I actually believe that I have an opportunity to do something that's going to be a greater impact than if I was a member.
And we're gonna go right to questions, because I know people have questions, but one thing that I got from that meeting that I think is important too, sometimes we think about mentorship as just somebody who's much older than us and we work for, we're esteemed to, but peer-to-peer mentoring is really important too. So you went back to your colleagues and said,
Oh,
okay, and so I think
Yeah.
sometimes we have to remember, like, you can glean things about people who might be in the same job station as you are, and those are other resources
Yeah.
to get clear.
And you would be surprised how many people want to help if you just ask them. Because you know what, it makes people feel good that they've done something nice to help somebody else. And I was really surprised at how much support I got, because I wasn't sure what to expect.
And don't you think people think you're fine, you don't, unless you talk to
Well,
them?
exactly, they think,
John
oh,
Boehner
they'll be
didn't know I should call her, but like
Yeah.
you called in.
Yeah, exactly, you're right. I mean, they did, and a lot of times people don't want to say, oh, I'm so sorry you lost your raise. Oh, I'm so sorry. People don't know what to say to you when they know something sort of devastating has happened to you.
But frankly, they're honored when you call them.
I agree.
Yeah,
I
I
agree.
served with Dana and Eric and.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you know all of these? Yeah. Okay, who's got the first question?
Yeah, so throughout your talk, I've just been thinking about questions, but the first one that comes to mind is, how did you build your person, not your resume? I think oftentimes when we get into jobs that you guys have had, we bring our resume to the forward, we bring our cover letters. And I think, those things don't make the person. How did you, with your successes as well as with your failures, make sure that the person was in front, not the resume or the.
That's a really hard question, Connie. You want to take that one first?
I think I could give it three.
So I think, first of all, you bring back the word respect, right? I mean, that's so incredibly important to have respect for one another. And I think as a person, you have to have convictions, you have to have morals and values, and you have to be true to yourself. And you can't be afraid to stand up to somebody when you disagree, but when you disagree with them, be polite about it, and be, respectful of other views. It's okay to disagree. But do it in a respectful manner and be a hard worker, be somebody that person can trust. Trust and loyalty are incredibly important. So as you're being yourself, you want somebody to know that they can trust you. If they want you to do something, you follow through on that. You show that they can count on you. And then as you go through life, you develop a reputation. And, you want to be somebody that people know that they can count on, if they need you. And that's kind of how I've always tried to conduct my life.
And I think that translates well into recommendations, like when you're looking, those people oftentimes say, who the person.
Yeah,
I think you
yeah.
want to respect validators.
Well, I would agree. I think you need a kind of confidence in yourself, so you don't underestimate that. That allows you to do a little bit more, because you've done your homework, do your homework first. And then you can present yourself and again, showing what you feel about people. I'll give you a little story. Once in a while, there will be a letter, one of my staff would send me a nasty letter from somebody in the constituency and say to me, Congressman Morella, I don't know how to answer this. So I said, just write a phone number and put it in my box, on my desk on the right hand side. And so maybe 3 days later, we have a special order. And so I'm in my office, special, somebody wants to say something before, and then you need to wait 3 minutes. So I'm in my office with the TV on, and I get a letter, and I call that person, which traditionally was a mail. That's fine. But, I would just say, Mr. Fallon, Connie Morella, and nothing, no answer, silence. And then I just think, I'm calling you, sir, from my office. I just want you to know I read the letter that you wrote. And again, it was silent. And then I got 1 or 2 answers on it, but 1 or 2. Oh, I didn't think you'd read it. And the second one was, I didn't mean what I wrote. Now, I always want to tell you that, but I spent the time, I had the time to go in the office by myself, and it was late early, and I would pick up the phone, we identified. I talked to him a little bit about that particular issue, not very much, a little bit. And then I found out, like 2 weeks later, a week later, he went to his Rotary group, somebody in the Rotary, and said, oh, John Barton told me that you personally called him. He was so impressed. And then, or either whether it was a synagogue or the church or a club, somebody else would get back to me and say, oh, you know, John Barton or whatever the name was, told me that you personally called. He just couldn't believe that a congressperson would take the time to pick up the phone. I think there's a lesson in that in some way. You know, and again, it's the one of sharing, doing your homework and sharing.
Anybody first? Let's go there.
Hi, I'm from Redondo Beach, California. And I was wondering, because the more I learn about Congress, like that commute back to your district sounds like really awful.
Yeah.
How do you
I'll let you
feel?
answer this today. She just told me where to chair.
That's okay.
Is it just something that comes with the job and the rest of the job's worth it?
Yeah, you just, listen, it's a mindset. So what I used to do, because I was part of leadership, so we had the Monday meeting. And I had to get in here because of the time change before the Monday meeting, and I was not taking red eyes. I'm so over red eyes, people. Don't ever ask me to take red eyes. I would leave on Sunday. And then so I'd get here Sunday night, and then I would be here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, depending on the week, sometimes till Friday, and then I would fly home. Sometimes I would usually stay out here on the weekends if we had a Friday, Monday session. Because to go home for 24 hours was just ridiculous. And so, I would go from Orange County to LAX, and I hate LAX. But then I would get that direct flight from LA to Dulles, which Dulles is a pain in the neck. And then out here, but I always felt like I had to have that direct flight because I didn't want to happen what happened to me yesterday, where I missed my connection. So it was just one of those things that sort of came with the territory that you just say, if I'm gonna do this, I'm just gonna make it, you know, my mission in life, and I'm gonna be on an airplane and I'm not gonna complain about it. So it's very, being from the West Coast, it's very taxing on
So what
you.
do you think about the idea of 3 weeks in session, 1 week in the?
I love the idea, but unfortunately, I don't think it will happen, but I think it's a great idea.
People like that, they don't do what she did in terms of coming in on Sunday. They come in late Monday. So nothing much happens on Monday at Congress for that reason. I mean, they have some stages, their day, et cetera. And then they'll be Tuesday, Wednesday, and they leave Thursday afternoon to get their flight, to go back. So, and then if you've got you've got too many caucuses too.
Oh, we got a lot
And
of
so
offices.
you're on this caucus, you go into a committee room and you don't see, but maybe at the dais, you only see like half of the members there because there are two important things maybe, but they just can't be there at that time. My lesson is what we did in my state legislature. And that is, we had positions where you sat. You know, you had your specialty, and it was Democrat together. You know, you had delegations that were together. You did not have, your committees did not meet while your legislature was in session. I don't know, January, you would agree with that again. Yeah. And so you were there to listen to it, you got to know the people, and then your committees were like in the afternoon. And the Senate would be just the opposite. They would meet in the afternoon, and their committees would be in the morning. Something like that. Again, I think you're right. It's probably not going to happen during my lifetime, but I don't know. Yeah, it's just saying, some things like that need to be done to get people together. And these poor people that had to travel. I didn't, I don't know, to the first of all every night. They didn't make it easier, folks, because people who were on list. One in the morning, noon, and night. But, yeah.
Hi, Chuck Mason. You all have had like a wealth of different jobs within your career. Before making a pivot to a new position or new job, what would go through your head, or how would you process the decision-making aspect before like taking?
That is a good question. For me, I just didn't think of it. I just did it. I was afraid if I started thinking about it, I talked myself out of it. The first time I ran for city council, I really wanted to do it. I was pregnant with my fourth kid. And, my mom, who was very important to me, didn't think I should do it. And Republican women were looking at me like, you shouldn't do this. And I thought, you know what? I'm gonna do it anyway. And I just did it because I knew I wanted to do it and I was passionate about doing it. But I look back now on all that and I think if I thought too much about it, I might not have done it. You know? And when I ran for Congress, and I think I might have shared with them when we had dinner, when I ran for Congress, I didn't even have time to tell my husband I was running for Congress because what happened was the congressman announced that he was not running. And I got tipped off and he announced it on the radio. And I got tipped off literally 5 minutes before the radio show that he wasn't running. And so I had to make sure that I told somebody that I was running to get it to the host of the radio show so that the radio show guy would say something, so I would be the front runner. And I did it because I knew I needed to be the front runner. And so it came out and the Congressman, John Campbell says, when the host said, you know, Mimi's gonna run, he says, wow, I just announced news travels fast. I literally, after that happened, I was on my way to a speech. I called my husband and I said,
Would you listen to the radio?
no, it's radio show. So when I called my husband, I said, I just gotta tell you, I gotta go give a speech, but I'm running for Congress. He said, okay, great. I'm in the middle of a meeting. I gotta go. I said, okay, fine. And then I didn't have time to tell the kids. I had to go give a speech. So it's like one of those things, that opportunity just arose and I had to seize on it and I just didn't have really time to.
Yeah, Jane, I see you laughing. Did you tell your husband?
Oh, yeah,
you're right. Oh, yeah.
But you had a pivot moment, there was a quick on the spot.
Yeah, no, well, and I got to hear moments and also moments where I can win. And so, you know, I ran for the chair of the Republican Party in Ohio. The first time as a female, I ran basically against our governor and his guy. So it was an uphill battle and people saying, you can't do it, I don't know if they're going to watch me. And it's that same, I think everyone has that moment in life, you just make that decision, and you just say, I'm just gonna do it, and trust your gut.
Yeah.
And be prepared, but trust your gut and have faith in yourself. And so I ran against the incumbent governor's guy and I beat him. They called it landslide change one by one. I didn't know that. That's my learned something. But I got reelected in the end. But then I ran to the Senate and I ran in a very contentious Senate primary and the Republican primary. It was absolutely not. I'm sure you can read about it sometime. I lived it. I don't need to read about it. But I didn't win the champion. But you know, you will have setbacks. And for me, I'm a very faithful person. And there's God has a different plan. There's a different plan out there. And you know, there'll be other chapters in my life, and that's the beauty of life. And you guys are about to enter into a great future, and I want to go to the future hopeful. And we need hopeful. So I just admire both of you, and I wanted to ask you both a question about. I'm passionate about research in public service, especially on the Republican side. Quite frankly, not a very good job. I've been doing the Republican legislature, and I just want to ask them, the things that you've done or want to do to more women to get involved in public service.
Well, I start off, the women's movement put the movement into me. And it's so very true. And so I decided that I was going to run for the state legislature, and that we had passed the ERA, and we had so much discrimination. You couldn't do, if you were a woman, you know, the Washington Post, one ads for men, one ads for women. No transgressing, no crossing the line. So there were things, a woman couldn't be a scientist, an engineer, a carpenter, it could be an elementary school teacher, a housemaid, a secretary, and that kind of thing. But when I ran for Congress, I must say, some of my husband's friends came through to help me. I had a lot of guys who said, well, you know, this is an issue you should begin to look at. You should connect with so-and-so. And I must say, I was very lucky that, my husband, he passed away 2 years ago, but, he would always, I always say, he would let me shine and he would walk 2 paces behind. Whereas he himself was a very successful lawyer. And he never showed up at town meetings or anything like that. Never, maybe he gave me a critique, but never engaged in my issues that I was doing. And the family, I don't know where to end, any notices, but, we've raised 9 children. The 6 of my late sister, plus our 3. And so that was a little bit of juggling, with kids having to work with each other and looking at what's important in terms of your value system. And then other things, whether it's a little dust here or something there, that was not important, but integrity and values were important. And so, that's kind of how my chronology, I had help from people, I had help from family. Well, I guess they figured if she wants to do it and she's got the ability, so why don't we try to help if we can in a small way? And I think you asked me about women. Yeah. Yes, a woman had to work harder. I am still, regretfully, one of the most democratic states in the country, Maryland. And I am the only woman who has gone from the state legislature to the federal Congress. That's the only woman to this day. And right now, we do not have any women from Maryland in the U.S. Congress, whether on the House side or the Senate side. So you see, it's not just Republican.
And so that's why you're involved with the Women in Politics program too.
Oh, yeah, the director of that was my staff assistant.
Yeah.
And
I don't even reach out to them.
Yeah, so I was, I can't compete with ERA, but I was involved with helping found an organization called the California Women's Leadership Association. And that was the brainchild of a friend of mine who had run for office as a female Republican and was up against the men. And we decided back in the 90s that we were going to form an organization to help promote more Republican women and get them involved in running for office, because Republican Women Federated never did any of that. Their job was basically to support whoever the nominee was and do all the grassroots work and help get them elected, but they wouldn't take positions in helping getting women elected. And so that's what our group was. And we tried to say we were compliments of the Republican Women Federated, because they saw us as big competition. And we said, no, we're just complimenting you. But we're involved in primaries, we're involved in helping women. And so that organization is statewide in California. And then I try to help women candidates, I speak at events and I help, to mentor them if I get phone calls or help them. So I do whatever I can. Just sort of set an example.
one of the to mention, excuse me.
No, of course.
Speaking of working on issues, a great example is our Office of Research on Women's Health at the National Institutes of Health, which is also a lot of other governmental agency, but it started there. It came about, it was in my district. It came about because I met with the then acting director, who was Bill Robb, and with Olympia Snow, Republican from Maine, Barbara Mikulski, who was a Democrat from Maryland, Pat Schroeder, sweet Pat Schroeder, who just passed away, and myself. We had 2 Democratic women, we had 2 Republican women. We met with all the institute directors around the table, and they all told us about how they did wonderful things for women, but they were not including women in voting college or clinical trials. They felt they were too fragile or the national cycle. So we worked on that, and we got Congress interested in it too. You got women in your district, who are affected by this, and that women's organization involved in it, and they established their office. And they subsequently had a woman who was the director of NIH, who's not as proud, and they continue to. I still meet occasionally with them, and they tell me that all the progress that's going on with regard to women's health, but I'm very proud of that. And of course, violence against women, where women help get started, and then they repeal
Well, to James' point, that's why it matters to have diversity and different people representing us, because they have to be at the table. I think one of the, what I was gonna say is, one of my favorite phrases of all time is lift as you. And so for a lot of you, don't forget that as you're trying to navigate, manage your way up your careers, you can put your hand out and help, the people around you too, because it'll only, it's a good thing to do, but it'll only benefit you. Why don't we have time for one more question, and we can certainly move on to talk about it. Yeah, I'm just, yeah.
Hi, thank you both for being here. I just have a question, I think that might wrap up nicely. How do you find the balance in your lives, right? You all have very, distinguished careers, a lot of opportunities, like you said, there's a portfolio, we're doing a little bit of everything. You had to run for Congress before calling your husband. How do you find that balance once you get home at the end of the day to be with your family, to be with the people you love? What did you do to find that?
You go first and then I'll go.
Yeah, with 9 kids, how did you do?
Yeah, I only have 4.
I ended, you don't find the balance. You work with the best you got, you do the best you can. As I said, we prioritize the jobs the kids would have. The youngest one, she wouldn't have any job, because she's too young. She was like in the 2nd grade. But yeah, someone would do the laundry for 2 weeks, someone would clean the table for 2 weeks. One of the things that I did even more than my husband was to make sure I went to the schools, to count PTAs, stuff like that. He would get involved and had to do stuff. I kind of was the one dealing with more with education. And so it was trying to share and then hoping we were doing well. It was particularly difficult for me because remember, my 3 kids suddenly were crossed with 6 more. And to this day, I still feel I could have done more for them, but everything has worked out well. We get together, so we're lucky. But for me, I would say you're never gonna find it perfect. And so you're gonna have to decide. But that's what life is about, right? You have to make some decisions. What about you?
Well, the only thing I would actually add, to what Connie said is that I don't have any friends because I had no time for friends. So you get so consumed in your job and what you're trying to do and raising your family and balance all of that, that you really, it's a life decision and you decide that that's all I have enough hours in the day for. Oh, by the way, I have no hobbies either. So no friends and no hobbies. So, but that was my choice and I'm happy with it. And I'm thrilled now. I mean, now I have obviously more time on my hands than I did before, but I'm trying to fill it up because I'm used to being busy all the time. And, the kids are grown, of course, and I'm not a grandma yet, but at some point when I'm a grandma, I'll have some time for them. But, anyway, it's been worth it. It's been absolutely worth it. And, I was blessed with a wonderful husband too, who was very supportive of my career, never tried to, outdo me in any way when it was my job, 100% supportive. He'd be there. He would go if I needed him. But if I did need him, he was very happy to stay home. So I was very lucky.
No, I think it's very important to learn that there is no perfect, you're never gonna have that perfect balance. And I think a lot of you ask questions about decision making about what you're really doing. And you will never have your perfect resume matched with the perfect time, with the perfect opportunity. Sometimes you just have to go for it. And balance is very hard. You never, but I think it's important. I think the theme of both of what you just said is that you have a really good, strong partnership. And picking the right person in partnership is very important. Yeah. I think that's essential. And I would just add that, what other people think is important to you doesn't have to be what's important to you, right? So if this is what makes you happy and, so think about, we always have some, pressure from the outside, but our life and what brings us joy is different, So I want to thank both you, Connie, and you, and certainly with the Women in Politics program. So we'll see you, I'm sure, at various parts of campus. You are an alum now, and you are coming back.
Yes, I will be back.
Okay.
Thank you.
for you today. We want to have you back because I think we'd love to have a longer conversation with you about your experiences. A couple quick things before we part, and certainly we can talk, ask more questions while we have time here. There are ways that you can stay involved and use the alumni network here at American University. They've been an incredible partner for this career services partnership. I want to thank Lisa, who's here with us today. Gonna get the materials there, but I'll just also remember that you need to be a part of the alumni, village. There's the DC Young Alumni Chapter. There's other, chapters in various cities. So, after you graduate, you have access to them. You should use them and benefit. Again, so my experience with alumni in other cities want to help you, graduated. They're there to help you. There's affinity groups. There, you can just go to the alumni website to find those out. You can certainly reach out and ask questions at alumni@american.edu or go to the website. There are LinkedIn and Facebook groups, and, YouTube resources. So please do that. And please stop by and get some information. I as also an AU alum, I will say two things. I have valued and really benefited from the Alumni Association, and the very first job I ever got, political job I got in Washington DC, was through the Career Center. So these groups are here to help you. So, and thank you all. Thank you all for taking the time on a beautiful spring day here in Washington DC in the height of finals and papers and everything I know. But we're here to give you some perspectives and to provide you with hopefully some program that's useful to you. And just you won't make the wrong decision. I think the best thing is the only time that I've ever regretted something is because I didn't go with my gut. And we're here to help you too. So thank you, everybody.